Community Action Stewardship, and we first organized in 2012, and it was around, we were fighting a 5,000 head hog confinement, and since then we've continued to work to stop the proliferation of CAFOs in our county and in our state, and to promote not going away from industrial agriculture to more sustainable regenerative approaches, and also support local food. And we are so thrilled tonight that we have Denise O'Brien here, who's been someone who's been fighting for a lot of these causes for almost 50 years now. And in a minute, I'm going to hand you over to Tommy, who will give you an introduction, but I just wanted to let you know that Denise's talk will be first, is our main agenda item. And then after her talk, we'll do the door prizes, which is pretty exciting too. And we want to welcome you or invite you to have some refreshments, something to drink and something to eat in the back. While you're doing that, those of you who feel like it could join us in a very, very short business meeting. And I think that I think I covered everything, hopefully I did. And so, Tony.
Thank you, Val, and thank you all for coming. Just to say a little bit more about Poweshiek CARES as an organization. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a Grinnell alum from the class of 2021. Poweshiek CARES is the organization that first got me started into Iowa politics. Being invited onto this board introduced me to the many issues that this state faces in its food and farm production system. So I just want you to know that this organization can be a resource for you to get more involved in the issues of our state. You can come to our meetings. You can even come to our board meetings if you want.
Yeah.
And you can be on our board.
Yeah.
So if you're interested in being on our board, please let us know. We're always looking for new members. Many of our board members have been on for serving as board member for a long time. So if you're interested, let me know, or let any of us know. We are very, very privileged tonight to welcome Denise O'Brien, guest speaker here, whose passion and life's work aligns with our mission and vision for Iowa. Denise O'Brien is a farmer and community activist from Atlantic, Iowa. She has farmed with her husband, Larry Harris, for 48 years. Together, they raised 3 children and are now enjoying 8 grandchildren. On their 17-acre farm, Denise has maintained 5 acres of fruit and vegetable production and was also a poultry producer who raised turkeys and chickens using organic practices. She is now in her 4th year of running a greenhouse business on their farm. But why are we here tonight? Because Denise, in addition to being a farmer, has been involved in the local, state, and international agricultural policy community regarding women farmers, local food systems, and conservation issues for decades. She's the co-founder of Women Food and Agriculture Network, past chair of the board of directors for the Pesticide Action Network, and past president of the National Family Farm Coalition. Her list of involvement goes on, too long to read now, but she is an outspoken and awarded person in the field of sustainable agriculture. She's been lauded for her community achievements and accomplishments. In 1997, she was invited to address the United Nations on behalf of the world's farmers. In 2000, she was inducted into the Iowa Women's Hall of Fame. She has received the Practical Farmers of Iowa Sustainable Agriculture Award, the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Iowa Farmers Union, and has also run for a political party here in our political office here in Iowa for House District in 2018 and for Iowa Secretary of Agriculture in 2006 in a tightly contested race. A little bit from a personal note, there's a law that suggests that every 2 people in the universe are connected by at most 6 degrees of separation. Some of you might know that as the Kevin Bacon law. If you had told me 5 years ago that I would only be 1 degree of separation from Neil Young, I would not believe it. But Denise has done that for me. And that's not the biggest thing that Denise O'Brien has. As a young person interested in Iowa politics and revitalizing rural spaces in America, Denise is a beacon guiding the path forward for young people and older folks combined. And every time I meet her, she shares stories from the past that inform her vision for the future. Both come from a wealth of knowledge and are invaluable to shaping how we think about Iowa's food and farm system. Without further ado, it is a great honor to introduce to you Denise O'Brien, one of my mentors and a true hero for Iowa's agricultural communities.
So do you know who he was talking about? 50 years? I don't, yeah, I feel that sometimes, yes. My mind does not feel that. Thank you, CARES. Thank you for the work you do. I want to thank my husband in having stand, Larry Harris, because he's the one that is supporting me. This is the 12th, the 19th of this month at 10:56 p.m. We'll be 48 years married. So we got married on the first day of spring when spring arrived. And his parents weren't real happy. My parents weren't real happy, but we got married at 6:20 a.m. with at Buck Creek United Methodist Church. And they didn't have running water or an inside toilet, but it was the church that the Harris family grew up in, and we raised our children. So it was quite a day that day. It was a beautiful day. It wasn't 70 degrees. It was in the 50s, I believe. But oh my goodness, this is not. It's nice to have it warm, but it's a little eerie, I think. So I want to start. There's so much to cover, and I got so involved in thinking about this. And is there a timekeeper? Tommy, are you the timekeeper? John, somebody can keep time. I guess the clock is up on the wall too. So, because I can get on a tangent and I don't want to do that. So we'll go there. So here's the beginning. Don't you look like a couple of hippie kids? Oh my gosh. Yeah. So I embroidered this. We had the outfits made for us, but I did all the embroidery on it. And we had a wildflower, bouquet. And this woman that is a wonderful violinist in our community, and she's still playing the violin at 90 plus, played Morning Has Broken, and as we came in the church. So there we are. So our dreams were, our farm is named Rolling Acres Farm, and we named that after a few years. I'm not sure how far into our marriage we named it Rolling Acres, but we live in a rolling, part of Iowa, and people go through Iowa and they think it's flat, and they really mistake that, because especially if you're a bicycle rider. And, I lived in town. I came back from northern Vermont, and I was going to stay for about 6 months, since that was 48 years ago. So anyway, met Larry and stayed. And one of our first, he loaned me his bike, which was not it didn't even have it must have had some speeds on it. 3 speed, maybe. I don't know, but anyway, it was I found out that the hills were really rolling. So here's our kids and kittens. Our kids would die if I told them I showed this picture. They're all now in their 40s. And the littlest girl on the bottom lives in Colorado Springs. And our son lives in Atlantic and has 2 children. Kaya has 2 children, and Brianna in the middle has 4 children. And they are out in Colorado skiing right now. So they hit some good snow. So here is one of this is a video that I found that is 4 minutes long, that I think is extremely informative. And Tommy assures me that the video, that the technology is going to work. So I'm gonna hit it there. I'm gonna widen. Oh, how do we hear that? Oh, put in plus. I didn't think about the sound. I love it when people like him can do the technology. It took me 2 days to do this PowerPoint, and actually the time I really got into it was this afternoon just before I had to leave.
The 1980s, American farmers confronted an economic crisis more severe than any since the Great Depression. Agricultural communities throughout the Midwest and across the nation were devastated. Families were forced from the land, lenders went belly up, and businesses on rural main streets closed, many to never reopen. It was a decade of turmoil. Grassroots activists chanted, "No sale." Politicians marched alongside struggling farmers, hoping to change government policies. Voices were raised in song and protest, letting farmers know they were not alone.
And let's tell the president that we're not going to fade away quietly in the countryside. Every day, 250 farm families go out of existence. 250 today.
The farm crisis was the result of a confluence of many things: failed policy, mountains of debt, land and commodity price booms and busts, and add two droughts, one in 1983 and the other in 1988. Farmers who were in the wrong place at the wrong time were crushed. Iowa was the epicenter of disastrous events that brought generations of farmers to their knees. In 1983, public farm auctions numbered around 500 a month. White crosses covered courthouse lawns, symbols of farms lost to the economic catastrophe. By the end of the decade, an estimated 300,000 farmers defaulted on their loans, and more banks failed in 1985 than in any year since the 1930s. In the shadows of insolvent banks, abandoned farmsteads, and shuttered businesses, there was human misery.
The opening statement of the suicide note was, "The fire killed me."
It was one of the worst times that anyone in agriculture could remember. It was a time of attrition, a time of deep, deep pain, a time of great uncertainty.
There was always a feeling, an underlying feeling of fear. Waiting for the other shoe to fall.
Being displaced from farming is more than simply the loss of a piece of real estate. But oftentimes it's part of one's identity, one's heritage, one's status.
When we came home, the little one, Joe, was 5 years old. He said that Daddy was out in the farm, and he was out in the machine shed with the rifle. That's how they found him when we come home from church.
The seeds of the 1980s farm crisis were sown decades earlier. During the roaring 20s, the nation's farmers were saddled with debt. Those debts came due in the 1930s. Half of Iowa's farms were lost. History would repeat itself 50 years later. The 1980s economic crisis would wipe out nearly another 1/3 of Iowa's farms. While every sector of life was affected by the Great Depression, the farm crisis of the 1980s was not the concern of many Americans.
In the 1930s, everyone in America suffered. Urban people, the rich banker, the poor farmer, everybody lost massively. Everybody was living close to survival. And it meant for kind of a national community. With the farm crisis in the 80s, basically it was only the farmer. And this meant the farmer was alone in an island of difficulty. And that is really something that eats at the soul sometimes deeper than being part of a more general firm.
So I thought that would be. That was from IPTV, so, and you can find it on there. We can go. There, okay. Okay, so I thought that would be, and whether they're me trying to explain things and that, and I thought that was a good piece. And I see Donna Winburn there, and we went through a lot of this together, Donna, and it was, so we started organizing. We started organizing as, you know, what are we going to do about this? And in the early 80s, Larry and I were part of a group. We just came together, actually through the Democratic Party. There's a lot of parallels that we came together with people around food buying clubs when we had Blooming Prairie Cooperative and in Iowa City that serviced all the buying clubs in Iowa. We had a group of people called Progressive Prairie Alliance in 1980. We got together and all our kids were little, and sometimes we met in a teepee and they were running around and we were doing pretty much consciousness raising things on a Sunday afternoon, because some people milked, some people farmed. So we didn't have a lot of time and we were all raising kids. And so we went from there until 1982 with the Farm Unity Coalition, 1985 with Prairie Fire Rural Action, and in 1985 the Rural Women's Leadership Development Project, which I became the director of, came to be. And we were funded by, believe it or not, the Ms. Foundation for Women out of New York City. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons that was is we had applied for a grant, and they did site visits to potential grantees. And Sasha Hori was our site visit person, and she stayed at our farm. And I don't know if you remember this, Larry, but she came out to the barn. We were milking cows, and I think we got the grant because of our lifestyle. And she was from New York City. She didn't understand anything, but anyway, they started us. But so this was really my beginning of looking at women farmers. In the beginning of the 80s, I was telling someone today that in 1981, I think it was, the National Catholic Rural Life had a big conference in Des Moines and brought a lot of people together. Larry and I, when I met Larry, he said he didn't want to be a corn and bean farmer. And so we started out doing some different things. We started raising strawberries and we planted apple trees and asparagus and raspberries and strawberries. 2 acres of strawberries. It was a little ambitious. Yeah. But it was good. And we didn't find any information from many people. Iowa State was not helpful. And that, so we learned it on our own. We found 2 organic farmers in Iowa at the time, because Larry had said, when I met him in this bar in Atlantic, he said he wanted to be an organic farmer. And so I thought, wow, you know, that's really something. And I've been living in California and Vermont and came back. And besides being good looking and pretty lovable looking, that sold me on it. And we met 2 farmers. They were one was actually from Grinnell, and his name was Clarence Van Sant. And I don't know if that name is familiar, but we came over to Grinnell, and he had Charolais, and we came and visited his farm. The other was Cyril Benner, and he was from Carroll County, and he had a dairy farm. So we got interested in that. And so we were becoming known as alternative, they called it alternative agriculture then. And so we were invited to this conference in Des Moines, and it was, we were up on a panel with other farmers, and we were in a room probably similar to this, and getting ready to give our little talk about growing strawberries. And the people on the panel in front of us were talking about losing their farms. And the whole room was in tears. The bank was coming and taking sheep away. They were taking their cattle away. And this was in 1980, 81. Our daughter was born in 81. So Kaya was about 6 months old then. So it was 81. And so that night, Larry and I had a discussion, and it's like, wow, we have to do something. And we decided that he would stay home and take care of things, and I would be I would be going on the road. We didn't know the word organizer then, but anyway, I would be. So Kaya, our 6-month-old, went to meetings with me until she went to kindergarten. And you can see that old pictures, you know, I'd sit in the back of the room when she was little and nurse her and, you know, participate in things, and sometimes I drove very compromised vehicles to Des Moines for meetings. And I'm thinking that that wasn't real safe, and I would be really upset if my kids tried to do that these days. But anyway, so that led to that. And when I was speaking, women would come, I felt like I had gone through a 2-year apprenticeship with Larry, and I felt like I could call myself a farmer. I learned how to drive the tractor, I learned how to fix things, I learned how to fence. Larry's father, Lyle, the dear man, was, he taught me how to make fence. And he was from the Depression era. And there was the first time in my life I'd ever seen anybody pull nails, go to the top of the fence post and straighten the nails to use again. So what a resource, you know, you just used what you had and reused it. So, and women would come, I was introduced as a farmer, and Tommy, that was way overboard what you said about me tonight. Thank you. It was very touching. But anyway, women would come up to me afterwards and they say, well, you call yourself a farmer? And I said, well, I guess, you know, I learned how to farm from my husband, and I feel like I'm a farmer. And I said, and they said, well, I'm a farmer's wife. And there was a generational thing going on here, but I'd ask them, what do you do during the day? Well, you know, they fed the hogs, so or the chickens. So many women had chickens. The chickens carried farms through the Depression and the egg money, and that's been proven. And I'd say, well, you know, that really sounds like a farmer to me. And no, I'm a farmer's wife, and that's okay. That was, you know, it was the thing that they felt most comfortable with. So, but I found out that during this, during the farm crisis and in the beginning, when I met, there was the women that were sounding the alarms. The men would just put their head down and work harder so it would all go away and wouldn't face what was going on. And the women were the ones that, a lot of them kept the books. And that was one of the things that they knew what the problem was. And so we started this Rural Women's Leadership Development Project. And when I ran across this the other day, I couldn't believe it. It was the fall 1987 is when Women of the Land was produced, and the legislator urges rural women to run. I think I'm still doing that today. I know I'm still doing that today. But anyway, this was women played a major role in the farm crisis, and to the good thing. It was a good thing. So we kind of go from the farm crisis into the 90s. I did this job for a while and then went back to farming and worked my way up in leadership into the National Family Farm Coalition presidency, which then opened up my life to a lot of international work. And it was pretty amazing. And the secret to that, people say, how did you do this? And really, it wasn't even a secret. At that time, there weren't many women farmers. There's many more women farmers now, but there was always somebody looking for a woman farmer to represent farmers in the United States. And so raise my hand. You go traveling, and you get your way paid. You go stay with farmers. You get to go. So it's taken me everywhere from Nicaragua to Cuba to the Soviet Union to Ghana to just places. And I'm a traveling type of person, and this really satisfied my urge to be off of the Iowa farm. My son, our son, who's now 43, we put him on the bus the first day of school, kindergarten, and I left for Nicaragua. And I had a good backup. Larry was the main backup, and then I had a mother-in-law and a father-in-law and a father that really, it was all of us together that did this. So I can't take credit for everything. I can take credit for being able to be on the road because I had such a good backup. So I let, here we are, 2006, so we'll skip a few years. And I was really tired of speaking to the choir. And when Bill Sack became governor, we had a Iowa Food Policy Council. And I was on that council, and we did a number of things like, well, during the farm crisis, we'll go back a little bit. Farmers' equipment was counted as assets, which made them eligible, not eligible for food stamps. And so we got the Department of Human Services that those were equipment, that was their job. They couldn't be used against that. That wasn't, and it was, heavily financed by banks. So we did that, and then during the local food, skip up to 97, 98 again, when Bill Sack went into office, 98, 2000. He started an Iowa Food Policy Council, and so we tried to we had a farmed cafeteria. We had different things going on that are still being built on today, and they're getting further and further, building and stronger. And so one thing for me as an impatient person, doing this work now for almost 50 years has taught me got to be patient and work hard and keep working and not give up. So I could say that I'm a patient person. Larry wouldn't probably agree with that. It is. So and let me skip a minute. I put this in the wrong place, actually. We started Women, Food and Agriculture Network in 1997, and it was an outgrowth of Beijing, China. There was an international United Nations women's meeting. There was a decade, the 90s was a decade of United Nations meetings. They had them on health, housing, women, and so on. And so as president of the National Farm Coalition, I got involved with planning for the Beijing conference, not knowing that I'm probably not going. But we wanted to document in the United Nations papers that came out of the accounts that came out of these meetings that there were women farmers in the world and that they should be heard. And so we started doing a case study, trying to find case studies on women in the United States that were farmers, and we couldn't find anything. And I had sociologists, rural sociologists helping, and we couldn't find anything on women farmers in the United States. It was before Google, so I can't even say if you Googled it. But all the research that we did, it came up international. Women farm, 75% of the food in the world is raised by women. And so so we went to Beijing. We did a 3.5 week, and I got to go. My daughter, Brianna, our oldest daughter, went with me. And we were there to convince the United Nations, the bureaucracy, that women should be counted. I worked with women from India and Australia, Sri Lanka, a number of countries together. And then we came back from Beijing, and I must say, I always knew that my country didn't really. I didn't think they were very respectful to the United Nations. It's like, we deal with things there, but we take it or leave it. But other countries we were working in, really their countries, they would take things back to their country and they could work it through their government to get included in the documents. The organic farming, women in farming, all those sort of things. So when I came back, we started a group. I met in post-Beijing, and I think, Jennifer, that's where I met your grandma. And Jennifer Sinkler is here, and her grandmother was Beverly Everett from New Sharon, right, just down the road. And she did work on the United Nations things. And so a group of us started Women, Food and Agriculture Network. And we started meeting, and we take a weekend and we go to church camp or a nature camp, and always slept in bunk beds with squeaky box springs. It wasn't the most comfortable when we were young, what can I say? And when we did it. And so Women, Food and Agriculture began in about 1997. And and we started in my county. There was a report in 1993 that talked about from the Economic Research Service of the USDA. And it said that women owned nearly 50% of the rentable farmland in the United States. And that is true, and it's true in Iowa. Women live longer than men, is a proven fact, and they inherit farms. And they also inherit farms from their, their family, their mothers or their fathers or whatever. So women do. Many women have not been empowered to make decisions about their land. And so we started exploring that in the late 90s and did a study in Cass County about how women made their decisions and what they felt like when they went to find the information they wanted. I remember one woman in particular from Mount Vernon said something like, I woke up in the middle of the night and I saw my tenant, I heard my tenant and looked out and saw him plowing up and down the pasture. He was plowing up the pasture because she wasn't going to be doing livestock, and she knew her husband would not have allowed that. And that if he was going to plow, it should be around the field rather than up and down the field. So, so we started working with women in learning circles, and we went all over Iowa and talked to and listened to. We weren't doing that much talking. And some of the interesting things that happened that came consistent throughout the state was that women would say, the vultures were at the door before my husband was even in his grave. And the neighbors' land, we all know how the land is and how, and these were neighbors that would come over, maybe they weren't even neighbors, and say, I want to rent your land. I'll take care of you, just let me rent your land. Some people taking advantage of it. And the women didn't know what to do. They didn't know. Sometimes their tenants were nephews or son-in-laws, sons, whatever. And so the mostly male, it's just the way agriculture is. And so they defer the decisions to their tenant, which is a lot of times the tenant has to go by what the policy is, as opposed to what, and conservation wasn't big in our policy. It hasn't been, somewhat, but not enough. So many women have met together over the years and have become empowered about making decisions, knowing that they could put in their lease that they wanted a buffer strip, they wanted trees, they wanted these things. And there's some very fine examples of women around the state that there's 4 sisters I can think of that have made decisions, and they do land walks. They get to know their land, and it's a wonderful thing that has happened. And it's not that they're going to take any less rent. They're going to make the decisions about how they want their land to be used. And many women were afraid to do this because they were afraid they'd lose their tenant, or it was a family member and they didn't want to start a ruckus in their family. And so we convinced them that the list to rent their land was 25 people long, and that they had the power to decide. So women caring for the land that I have here. This is one of the things we did. We go out and look at good conservation practices. We go out to a pond and look at the biota and the little animals and everything in there. And women just love this. It was such a neat thing to do. And that is too, but, and this was my farewell to Women, Food and Agriculture Network. So we'll go back a little bit. I took it to where I could as an executive director. And I knew there was either somebody out there that could take it further, or it was not going to survive. And that was okay with me, because then I'd taken it to where it could go. Well, there were people that stepped forward, and we've had several directors since my time But they have done a lot of work and with young women farmers especially. There's a program called Harvesting Our Potential, which is a mentee program. And this was my farewell. In my last paragraph said, so I only say farewell to you as the former executive director of WEFAN, and hello to you as a woman farmer and activist who will always have her hands in the soil, her heart on the land. Sorry, it just makes me emotional. So where I went from there, I went to run for Secretary of Agriculture. So we're back to this place. And I did that in 2006. I called up a friend and I said, Mary, I'm tired of talking to the choir. We're not getting anywhere. So I'm going to run for Secretary of Agriculture. It was an open seat. Patty Judge had been our secretary. And she stepped aside to run for Senate. And so it was an open seat and I decided to step forward. And it was very interesting and to decide that and to go and I told her, and it's in my words, I said, I want to take on the farm girl. Well, yeah, that was a kind of big, that was a big task. And they made sure I didn't get to be the Secretary of Agriculture, but they had to work hard at it. So anyway, I decided to run. I had a primary that I ran against the governor, Bill Sachs' pick, his choice. And I had known Dusky since he was a little kid and was hoping that Dusky would say, oh, Denise, you go ahead and run because I can do it another time. And he did not. So we came down to a primary. There were mornings I would wake up and I would say to Larry, I can't do this. And I'd cry. And he said, well, you don't have another choice. This is it. You have to do this. But I had so much help and I had it was wonderful traveling all over Iowa. Grinnell was one stop. And it was funny because my campaign really didn't start until I got to Des Moines, just right off Western Iowa. It's, it's pretty conservative and it's very empty. And so, everything, it would be, sometimes I'd leave at night and, to go east of Des Moines was where everything was for me, all the cities and things. So I ran the primary, I won. Governor Vilsack called me up the night I won. He had been supporting Dusky, of course, and he wrote me a very large check to be able to start my campaign. He was very generous and knew that, and he knows politics. I didn't have a clue, but he, that was what he did. And so I had wonderful help running my campaign, and it was off to a rough start, but we got there. And I have to say this, you guys will all just kind of be surprised. The state auditor, Rob Sand, was my campaign manager. And Rob still looks like he's 28 years old. But by golly, we need him for the governor, and those of you who are Democrats, if I said something offensive, I'm sorry. But yeah, Rob was, I had met him on a campaign trail. I was doing my routine, driving to a rally, putting my makeup on, practicing what I was going to say, and Rob would be there because I think he was helping Ed Fallon then. And so after I won, and then I asked Rob, and he said yes. So he was really strict, and he made me stay on the phone a lot to raise money. And he also had a very good list of people for me to call. And so my first campaign check went after I hired Rob. Rob went to Brown. So he went to Brown University. He had a list of pretty wealthy people that he hung out with. And my first check for $2,500 came from Rhea Perlman and Danny DeVito. That's something. And I had Alice Waters, I had Michael Pollan. Some of you know those names. They're really well-known names in the food, with foodies and that. I flew out to California, and Alice Waters did a fundraiser in her restaurant, Chez Panisse, in Berkeley. When I got back to Iowa, there was already a commercial on TV that said, boom, 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 Berkeley, Shattuck Avenue, animal rights activist. O'Brien is bad for Iowa agriculture, and they'd already gotten a hold of that I had gone there. And yeah, at the same time, my opponent was in Washington DC getting the major corporation. So, you know, that would, you know, at least I was getting it from some foodie people. You know? So anyway, that was an adventure, and it was tough, and I made it through. I'm here today, so we can say that. So I went to, this is something we did in 2013, but just to catch you up. And so after I lost the primary, I went, or the election, I did a CSA, Community Supported Agriculture. And I started that and did that for a number of years. And then in 2011, I went to Afghanistan and for a year to be an ag advisor. So I was there for a year, came back in 2013. In that intervening time, Larry and I had gotten a grant from the NRCS to do a high tunnel. So this was, you know, our dream was to have a high tunnel. And we got a really nice one, and we built community. We had numbers of people that came and did it. There's a mix of family and friends in here. And that's putting the plastic on the high tunnel that you see a lot of high tunnels around. So we created community around that. One of my mentees, Bonnie, came that fall, and here's the finished product. That's what our high tunnel looks like. And it's on a track. So it's like 2 high tunnels. It's a 72 feet long, but the track is 156. And that can be moved by 4 people. It's all it takes. It's on wheels and it's on that track, and it's the Cadillac of high tunnels. And so Bonnie was a mentee on our farm from the Women, Food and Agriculture Network. And this is from the 2020 annual conference of Women, Food and Agriculture, and they've really gone way beyond their national organization and international with international networks and that. And I just love this. This is just a beautiful logo that I want to bring. So then in 2018, I decided to run again, but this time for the House district. So these are my 2 granddaughters on the right, and that's what we did on the car. I lost in Southwest Iowa, most of Iowa, the counties are so red, and it was like a 70-30, you know, I got 30%. But these signs, I'll tell you, they make great, we recycled them all over our farm. They make great, I raise turkeys, they make a great place for the turkeys because they're that high. And we've used them, we're building a house and we're using them for covering the floors and things. They last forever and they're plastic. So these are, yeah, we do a lot of recycling at our place. This was, so politics have always been a part. This was from 2020, and Elizabeth Warren, I supported her. And we had all her stuff. You know, I'm so glad to be hearing that people are stepping up to run, young people stepping up to run. Tommy, you put your papers in today. Yes. He's going to be running against Dean Fisher, I understand. So, and what's the Senate number?
It's House District 53.
Senate, I'm sorry. House District 53. Okay. So, and we have several other farmers union people that have stepped up. So this is what's wonderful. So lots of people know we're building a straw bale house, and Larry and I have dreamt about this for a long time. So this is like, I kind of figure it's the capstone to our, you know, our tree hugging environmentalist, you know, life. And so we studied it for a couple of years. We researched, we found a design by an architect and picked this one. And we had a workshop at our farm during COVID, and it was in September 2020. And, you know, we're just getting up to the point now that 4 years ago, this just broke out. I have it in my journal that it was March 19th. The world shut down is what I had. So we took we took, it was, people paid and came from all around the country to do this. So it was this decision, are we gonna do it or are we not gonna do it? People came and camped out, brought campers and tents and our obligation was to have 3 meals a day for these people. We had about 23 or 4. And we wore masks, took temperatures, and nobody got COVID. We were fine in that September when it was there. Oh, I went backwards. So here's the crew. So this is one of the workers had a drone. So this was really fun because he took all sorts of neat pictures. And that's what it looks like from a drone. And then here's what it looks like. I took this picture today. So this is limestone on the outside. It's not finished yet, but it is the limestone it captures carbon. And the man who started Patagonia, Chenard, he's helping to do a suburb in California of straw bale houses. And the architect that he's working with, I watched a little video, and he called them carbon sponges. So we're going to live out our life in a carbon sponge. And it sounds really comfortable, and it will be. But I don't have a picture of the interior, but it's, Larry dug a hole about 10 feet outside the house, and that's the clay we're using for the plaster. So we got the straw from a neighbor up the road. It's organic straw, came from a small farm that still does square bales. And if you look on this very far side of that side, back on that part is where the clay came from. So there's different mixtures for different layers of the plaster. And it's sand, it's always sand, straw, and water and clay, those 4. And so we're getting to this finishing plaster now, and there's very little fiber. If there is any fiber, it's cattails. So it's what we've dreamt about, and at some point, but don't start building a house at 70, I would say. It's taken a little longer than we thought. So, but it's okay. So, and we put solar on it too. We wanted solar, so this is what the front of the house looks like. Although now where you see the plywood, it's cedar plywood, cedar planks. But here's and this year so far, I think our bill for our electricity is going to be like maybe $200. And usually January was a really cloudy, foggy time. So, but February has been all sun, which we don't need all sun. But so this is the hope and the dream. This is what I want to say in conclusion. There's so much more, and I don't want to, it's time. And, but I really love the fact that this used to be from the Iowa Department of Agriculture. I don't know if this still exists or not, but anyway, that was what we have. Here's the younger generation. We helped this family. Emily and Olivia are here, and their neighbors. And we put this up just before, actually 4 years now. It was just before COVID hit. So this is a greenhouse that they put together that was half of the greenhouse that we bought. We bought a greenhouse from one that was going out of business and took it apart, but it was 96 feet long. Was that it? So we only needed half of it. So we had the other half. So Emily and Nathan, her husband, bought it. They are now going to be putting up a high tunnel that's 96 feet long up at their farm. And it's they're young farmers. They remind me a lot of us. So, but these are the 3 organizations that I think have really helped. This is Women, Food and Agriculture. You can read that, can't you? I don't need to read it for you. And then Farmers Union with the Food and Lobby Day, and then Practical Farmers of Iowa. And I do serve also the other organization that helps a lot. And I didn't think of this until I was done. I served as the secretary. Am I secretary? I think I am. I was treasurer, but now I think I'm secretary of the Iowa Organic Association. And it's an organization that's small, But there's a big program going on with the USDA, and it's pumping a lot of money into transition from conventional agriculture to organic agriculture. And it's a program that people are signing up for because of their interest in organics and the benefits of, you know, that hopefully it would be nice if all Iowa would want to do this so we could have clean water, but that's probably beyond my lifetime. So, and these are just some, the hope is, you know, these are my kids, my grandkids and my son in our greenhouse, livestock on the land. Tatum, your father was in that, wasn't he? Yes. That was a great film. If people can look that up and see it. But here's the monarchs, there's the tree frog. Those are the reasons that we keep doing what we do. And here's another tree frog. It's about art as well. Up in that corner over there is Chad Elliott. He's a folk singer in Iowa that is fabulous. And he came, so arts, Mary Swander from Iowa City, from Kelowna, has been trying to bring arts together with agriculture. And Chad Elliott came out and we had a program for the kids about growing seeds and singing and painting and everything. You know, there's ladybugs. The little girl in the dirt down there with a dirty face is our 17-year-old granddaughter. I ran across this. So she, her mom said, oh, just eat the soil. You know, she knows it was safe at our place with being organic farmers. You know, we need rain. We have beautiful sunsets. We have ladybugs. And these are the things that are most important to us. And here's our grandkids. We have our son-in-law has a school bus and our daughter has a school bus that they go camping in, and a lot of times they just camp out in our yard. And so here's 8 of our grandkids, and this was a picture that has always been really dear to me. So this is our future. So I'd like to stop there. I think I've gone a little long, but who do I give the mic to? If anybody's interested in looking at our bale house and you're on Facebook, it's called the Denise O'Brien straw bale, and you can find pictures there. I've been pretty good about putting pictures up. I forget occasionally, but we're working on the interior now and hope to be in this summer. And the man that is the plasterer, and our wood stove, we have a mass heater, is from Omaha. We were really lucky. It was one of those synchronicity things that happened, that a friend of ours was sitting at the kitchen table, a young friend we were farming with, and we said, Tyler, do you know anybody doing straw bale? And he goes, yeah. And he called up his friend who was in Omaha, and he said, yeah, I'm working on a straw bale north of Atlantic, is what he said. We thought, north of Atlantic, you know, we would know if when we lived north of Atlantic, we would know if there was something going on. Well, it turned out to be in Brayton, which is about 20 miles away. And Jim came out, so he's been doing the plaster and I mean, it's a work of art. It's a craft, and we will be having open houses when we finally get it finished and that before we move in. But it's 1,100 square feet, and it looks bigger than it because it has a second story. So, any questions? Yes.
First, thank you for sharing your story with us. My question is, what is the most prominent obstacle for women farmers today? And if there is one, how could it be solved? Through community, through bills?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you for asking that. And I think we're not taken seriously. You know, the male, you know, face in agriculture in the United States is just so embedded in everybody's brain that you know, even today that I run across that. And Larry always says, well, she's the farmer, you know. And I heard Nathan, our friend Nathan, who's Emily was in there with Olivia. He said, I asked him a question the other day. See, we all slip into it. I asked him a question. He said, I don't know, ask her, and I think it's that we, even though the majority or a good share of the people going into farming now, into small scale farming, vegetable production, food that people eat, we still don't have that respect. And I have a friend over in Mount Vernon, and she knows all about tractors, she knows everything, but the guys try to make decisions for her. And that's a thing that's a barrier as well. It's just, you can go, I try my best to know, if I've got to go ask a question, I try to study as much as I can about what question to ask and that, but I don't think they hear me. I don't think they understand that I know. And I'm sorry to say, that still exists to this time. And we do it internally too. Just for instance, I felt like since we were first married, that Larry could go into town and he could go just out of the field, greasy, dirty, everything else. I felt like I had to dress up until about 3 years ago. And now it's like, and about 3 years ago, I noticed that people that really I'm invisible as an older woman. Yeah. I'm invisible. Yeah. Oh, isn't that interesting? And actually it's kind of freeing, I think, in some ways, unless I want to be listened to and respected. But it's weird. I see a lot of nods in agreement, and I really appreciate that, because I kind of came to understand a long time ago that it wasn't just me, that it was, and y'all are affirming that. So does that answer that enough? And what can we do about it? Just continue to be yourself and to be, that empowered person that, my friend Laura has just said, when somebody suggested she does something else to fix the mechanics on her tractor, she'll just say, no, this is what I want done. And still she has the problem of them thinking what the problem is, fixing it like they thought, and they didn't get it done. Right. So did you have a question?
I did. I want to know what the biggest challenge was with rural organizing and how you guys attempted to overcome.
Yeah. With what today's challenge is with rural organizing is that people, in my case, and I think it's that everywhere, is that people I'm a Democrat, I'm the chair of our county party, and people don't want to identify themselves in public about being a Democrat, and there's a lot of nodding in there. It's very, very scary, and the repercussions when you see the flags flying in town, and that aren't very pleasant. And just the other day, I got a complaint about a neighbor. He's taken 4 utility poles along a state highway, and he has Trump flags on every one of them. And I complained about it during the last election, and nobody did anything. But my son looked up the DOT law, and I haven't had time this week, but I'm going to start a campaign with other people to call the DOT until something's done. But it's hard for people, and this is long term. It's 2016. Since 2016, it's been harder. But people wouldn't identify as Democrats because people wouldn't do business with them. And so it just, that's the kind of thing. It's rural, I guess. And so, it's our county. I have a wonderful team of people, and what we're doing to make ourselves visible and to welcome people in, we're doing parades, we're doing festivals. We are having fun, and we want to show people we're having fun. And so we want to really convince them that it's okay to be out as a Democrat. Donna, did you have a question?
Suggestion for the young lady sitting next to you.
Yes.
Find a farmer or somewhere with those solar panels and see if you can plant garden produce underneath those solar panels. If they're fenced in.
Oh, yeah.
Coyotes around. You have dogs and get it away. So that's one suggestion.
Cool. That's neat. And I've seen that done, or I've heard that done. So any other things? I think could stay here all night.
Yeah.
Because I'd like to hear your stories as well. I'm privileged to be up here with the microphone, so. But in conclusion, I just want to say, being as active as I've been, and I've been healthy, I appreciate having good health. And part of that's attributed to being organic farmers, I'm sure. But probably good genes as well. You know, I just my genealogy in my family and that. But I really, my body and my mind don't coordinate very well. My mind is much younger than my body. You know? But that's life, and that's what happens as we age. And what I like about my age is that I can now speak with authority, and you know, even if it's not heard by some people, it's heard by others. So it's one of those things that I appreciate about aging. So, okay, I think that's.
One last question that came in online was, could you repeat the info about the straw bale house, how
Oh.
you find it online?
Sure. On Facebook, our Facebook page for the straw bale house is Harris O'Brien Straw Bale. Yeah, you're welcome. So it's all yours, Val or Tommy, which one?
Thank you so much, Denise. It was like, hearing your story and your life with Larry is very inspiring, really. And you know, can imagine you continuing to work in Iowa and helping people connect over agriculture. I just want to say that there are some WFAN materials in the back of